To get a woman that understood and enjoyed and participated in marijuana smuggling was very unique and very rare.
Hi, everybody. I'm Todd Dankin, and welcome back to yet another edition of Becoming the King of Pot. With me, as always, is my cousin Bruce Perlowin, who is the King of Pot. Bruce, welcome back. How's everything going?
Things are going great, and I'm extremely excited today because after 25 episodes, finally, we have our first woman on, because women were not that prevalent in the smuggling era.
Yes, we do. We're very happy. We're going to meet her in just one moment. Before we do, though, if you haven't done this already, and if you're watching us for the first time or the 100th time, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It really helps us here at Becoming the King of Pot. Also, wake the neighbors and tell the kids, this is fun stuff we're doing here. And let's get everybody on board watching. So thanks for that. And like you said, Bruce, a longtime 40-year friend. Oh, my goodness. A 40-year friend that was also in the smuggling business joins us today. And it's Rozanne Anderson. Rozanne, welcome to Becoming the King of Pot. How's it going?
Thank you, Todd. It's going fine. I mean, I'm in Southern California.
Nice.
Weather's great.
Nice.
I'm doing great.
Good for you. So Bruce and Rozanne, we want to go back in time and, really talk about how you guys met, how you guys worked together, and what were some of the shenanigans that you guys got into. So how did you guys first meet?
Well, I'll start it off. So in Florida, you're wheeling and dealing loads. You're bringing your own loads in, plane loads, boat loads. You're offloading, a lot of offloading other people's loads, and a lot of selling. You don't have an offload. You don't have your load coming in. Oh, Rozanne's got 20,000 pounds or 1,000 pounds or 10,000 pounds that she'll front me, or I'll front her. I work most with her husband, Paul. And we really didn't work a lot in Florida. We just, like, in passing, to give you some context of how we all worked together back then. Rozanne's brother was Jeff Wagner, and Jeff and we did a lot of sold a lot of pot together, because Jeff's girlfriend was Robin Lane, who I grew up with, and I talked all about Carol Lane in some of the early episodes, I think episode 4 or something, or 5. And so Carol introduced me to Rozanne and Paul. It's just one of the people that so it wasn't like we did a lot of work together, like we did a load there. Our relationship really got cemented out in California and worked a lot out there together. But she has some really colorful history of how she grew up in the smuggling world. And that reflects on how I grew up. We grew up and doing the same thing, like a lot of us did in South Florida. So with that,
Parallel
I'll turn it
universes yeah. So you were kind of, living in this parallel universe, right? You were doing your thing. Bruce was doing his thing. So we've learned all about Bruce's thing, and then we'll get to that when you move out to California. But what were you doing in Florida, and how'd you get into the pot business?
I started dating somebody that was in the pot business, and
classic way into the business.
You've said it perfectly, Todd, when you said it was a kind of a parallel universe. Because throughout, I've been listening to podcasts, and the stuff that you'll ask Bruce a question, and I answer myself in my head or out loud.
Right.
And
right.
It's the same answer I would have. So everything, there was a way to do things, and that's what happened, I got into it because of my boyfriend, but the reality is I grew up with, my father was an attorney, and he dealt with people in the drug business. I mean, guys would bring him bags of cash. That's how they paid, So,
Right.
And I remember I had my own business at one point, and I asked my dad what I should do about the bank account, and he said, get a cigar box. So working in cash was always something I knew. He would,
Yeah.
he had a lot of cash. So I guess it was just natural.
Right. So
And
you
plus,
meet
I
your
didn't like
boyfriend, and
getting up every morning having to go to work for somebody else, and we
yeah, I don't
didn't
think
have to do
anybody likes that.
that.
Well, I wanna
That's right.
interject something about Rozanne working for somebody else. She told me when she went to high school, she was very industrious, very entrepreneurial, that every day I don't know if you remember this, Rozanne, every day you made an outfit of clothes.
Yeah.
You made them yourself, and you never wore the same outfit twice for the entire high school. Alright, can
Yep.
you imagine go home making your clothes? She's an artist, and she'd make an outfit, and then she'd wear that, and then the next day she'd make another outfit. Very industrious, very entrepreneurial.
Well, that's awesome, that you're
That's
able to
true.
do that. Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So you meet this guy, you start dating, and you find out he's, smuggling or dealing, or what is he doing? Is he
Oh,
a
no,
big time
it
guy?
wasn't I didn't he was my first date when I was 12 years old, and, and I ended up marrying him.
Oh, that's
So
hilarious.
yeah, and that's what he did, and, it didn't bother me, and I kind of got involved because there's a lot of male egos around this, a lot of cash and a lot of things going on, and so a lot of times my job was just to get in the middle, to separate this, because, you didn't wanna have a lot of that stuff going on, especially if you're in a hotel room or around, public. So it kind of like I was like the voice of reason,
Ah,
and,
and kinda
so
like
I
the
was always
mediator.
there.
Yeah.
And Bruce made a point, there's a lot of money and a lot of drugs, and my husband would get high, too high. So I kind of like had to take over because we had a lot of pot and had to had to go. Honestly, I'm not sure exactly how I got into it, and I don't think I realized at the time that there were not a lot of other women. I just figured these guys that I met had girlfriends and they would be involved.
Right.
Um, but I never saw any other women, which is kind of funny. Um, I was never paranoid. I was never because I thought we just covered all our bases, you knew there were certain things you had to do to be safe.
Mhm.
And
What were some of those things?
like, using a house once. At one point, I even bought a house in the Everglades, and, we did one trip, one big load, and that was it. We were done. I
Got it.
never went
So you
back.
use these houses as sort of stash houses to hold all the pot that comes in, and then to sell all the pot from, and then you leave town. Or not leave town, but leave the house.
That was the way I think maybe I started that, but it was like I just felt it was safer that way.
Yeah.
Most of the time, we lived in one house. We had a house where we lived, and then the others were just houses for the boats to come in,
I
and when the
see.
boats
I see.
did come in, we would maybe go have a barbecue outside, just give a reason for being there. But, neighbors could be kinda nosy, and
Yeah.
so I just felt like it was just worth it. The houses were not cheap, they were expensive, but
Yeah.
it was, worth the, doing it that way. So,
Right.
that
Yeah.
may have been my idea, just doing it. I just didn't wanna live with it. Sometimes we had to maybe have it in the house, we had to get it. But, this whole business actually, I mean, it is a business, and you have to realize that once you get a way that is working, you wanna, you're gonna keep doing it, It's like
Yeah.
when getting a boats to go out and pick it up rather than, dock it. It was, sometimes they come into a slip, but, it was my job to get the houses and stay sane, and it wasn't tall as it always high. I mean, he was good. He gave a lot had a lot of his hands in a lot of stuff, and it wasn't my business, so I can't tell you exactly what was going on there. I had my job was, to get the stash houses,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
and
So
it wouldn't be there
you
very long. I think the
right. You were
one
the
that we
real
had to
estate
live with
expert.
the 3 bedrooms, I mean, that was kind of bizarre,
Yeah.
um, but that was kind of rare that I actually was living in the house, you
Got
know?
it. So you would just meet people there. You would meet the guys
Yeah.
who would do the
And the
unloading.
guys would
You would
come
meet the
in,
guys who
and
were
they'd
coming to
have
buy it.
maybe part of their money, and, I would weigh it out, and they'd have a van or but they didn't drive either. Somebody was driving. We'd fill the van. They'd give me money, and I'd put it on the floor with on a sheet. And then the next person came on, I'd put another sheet on top of that and put their money on top of that sheet. The next guy would come in, and I'd put another sheet on the floor and put their money, because I didn't have time to count it while I'm sitting there selling, because it was fast,
Interesting.
and then when the last load went out, I'd have to go get a hotel room with 2 rooms. I get a suite, because 1 to count the money and 1 so I could order room service. It was a
Right.
lot of money coming in.
Yeah. And how much money was coming in?
I can't remember any figures. I'm not like Bruce. I tell you what we were doing, but I don't remember. Obviously, in the millions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 20s and 10s, 20s, 50s, and 100. The other stuff
Got
we
it.
just put aside. That was like
Yeah.
loose change.
And what do you do with all that money, and how do you organize it, and who was in
Well,
charge of that?
because you had people to pay, like Bruce said. You'd put whatever they had. Maybe you had a couple of suitcases, or briefcases, different people, and you had to pay off people, because you needed more pot immediately. If I was counting money, we needed more pot. It was coming
Yeah.
in. You could never get too much. Unfortunately, it was dirt. It tasted horrible. Back in the 70s when we first began, I couldn't smoke it.
Oh, really? You weren't
and,
even smoking
then
back then?
I couldn't believe people were buying
Well,
this
no.
stuff.
She couldn't smoke that quality. What did you smoke?
A hash. I'd buy like a kilo of hash. That was my stash.
Yeah.
But
Okay, I want to interject something here based on what she was saying. So you just heard her say she bought a kilo of hash as a personal stash. Back in those days, we had so much money, any drug on the planet that you wanted, you could get. So whether it was opium, whether it was heroin, whether it was cocaine, whether it was hash, whether it was Taiwi, whether it was Maui Wowie from Hawaii. So the smugglers had the best of all the pot. Now, that all the pot and the best of all the drugs, the Quaaludes, Percodans, whatever we wanted, we had to our heart's
Yep.
content, enormous amounts. And sometimes we abuse it, like her husband, Paul, or boyfriend, Paul. He would get too high and too stoned. Now, imagine you got, 10,000, 20,000 pounds in a house, and you have 2 guys there, and they start to argue. All right, because they're stoned. They're out of their frickin' minds, right? With whatever drug they wanted, because we had the money to get any drug. Now you have Rozanne, and you said she's gonna get in between them. Well, here's why. Now, she doesn't know this because she's not a guy. She was exquisitely gorgeous, a goddess like you can't believe, tall, thin, beautiful as they come, not a 10, more like a 12. So no guy is going to argue with her. She may not realize that. The last thing a
know
guy's
that.
going to want to do is piss her off because, who wants to piss off somebody that beautiful? So that instantly put us to stop fighting and arguing. That was number one. All right. So, and that's why she was able to control. Paul's out of his mind; he's passed out. And I remember the same thing when he got out to California. But
What was Paul's drug of choice? He wasn't
At the
passing
time,
out
it was
from weed.
a lot of cocaine.
Well, he
A
wasn't
lot of
passing out from cocaine.
we went to a party at one point, and there was a television, and he put a line on the top of all the way down and did it. I mean, it was pretty
Sounds like someone I
outrageous.
used to know.
And if I was in charge, I always had any kind of cocaine or anything like that. I would have in a locked suitcase or something, and I wore the key around my neck, and nobody got it until the last load went out. Then you can have what you want, but I wouldn't allow it, and
Right.
of
And
course,
were you
I
guys
didn't do anything then.
were you guys dealing in cocaine, or you just
No,
partying
no,
with it? Yeah.
no, never, only pot.
Got it.
So I want to ask Rozanne, let's go back in Florida to where Paul started, back down in the Keys, because that's an interesting story, and that leads to what her and Paul were involved with in a pretty big, huge case, Operation Sunburn or Sunburst. But how did that all start down in the Keys?
Okay.
ex-
We had a friend, Charlie Brake, and his friend, Bill Cobb. I guess he got fired. They both worked for Hawaiian Tropic because the person that started it lived in Daytona, where I am from. And Bill moved down to the Keys, and he got fired. So he came up one time and was visiting, and he told me he was fired. And in that big, I mean, bedrooms full of pot, we had 13 pounds of what was called back then gold. It was Colombian gold. And it was a beautiful color. It didn't smoke any better. It didn't taste any better, but it was gold and it went for way more money. Well, we had 13 pounds and I gave it to this guy, Bill. He went down to the Keys and sold it. Well, within, a couple months later, he was in the house and this big moving truck at nighttime comes through his gate. He had like a barn on his property. He had an acre. In the Keys, that's a lot. This big truck comes through and it was full of these Colombian guys. And they said they didn't ask. They said, we're using your barn. And they just went into the barn and, because they were being chased or something, they needed a place that was safe. So Bill that's how he got started. And later he became, a big pot seller anyway, because he was friends with these Colombians who just took over his place. So
and then
that
and the
that was
Bill
kind of
the
funny
Bill
because
Cobb.
if you had 13 pounds of gold in the Keys, which is very small, everybody knows what's going on. They thought he was a big dealer. So
So they pulled
and
into
that's the
his
first time I
yard.
heard actually of the Colombians coming here. That was the first, and after that, everything's changed. Because mostly the guys that we dealt with, they were like friends, and if they did give us money, it didn't always have to be all of it. It may have been just part of it because we trusted each other. It's like, why I took the money, put it on a sheet, I trusted that whatever they said, that's what they gave us. And it was always pretty much okay. And when you're talking about getting between guys, one big story, we were in Atlanta, Georgia, and this big hotel. And I guess we were meeting some of the guys that we sold because we sold a lot up north. And we were in this room and there was a lot of money and I needed an adding machine. And so we had to call the desk. They brought it down. Well, these two guys started arguing. So we're in a hotel room with a lot of money and two guys are arguing. We didn't want that attention. So that was
Sure.
one of the biggest things I had to break up. I had money to count, you guys. So I had to go rent another room next door. You always had to have two rooms because you had to order food. And you didn't wanna have the money when they came
Yeah,
to buy it.
you need the money room, of course,
Yeah, we
and then
need
you
the
need the
money
food
room.
room.
Yeah.
Right.
So did
I
Bill
mean, that
Cobb
was always
start
fun.
did Bill
Makes so
These
Cobb
much
things
start
were
sense.
normal
supplying
for
you
us.
guys?
They may be odd to other people, but to us, renting a suite, one to count money in was pretty normal.
Yeah, it was just everyday occurrence.
It
Did
Yeah.
was
Bill
yeah,
Cobb start
exactly.
supplying you, Rozanne?
Yes, we did. We worked with him, once or a couple times until finally he was a very selfish person, and, I couldn't be around that because it got scary because he was dealing with the Colombians. And so you better have that money to him at a certain time. And I remember once going over with a suitcase full of money and he was so nasty. And I took the suitcase and there was a huge fish tank. I just threw it into the tank. We had water and fish everywhere. I mean,
What? Whoa, wait, we gotta hear this story. So back up a little bit. What
okay.
happens?
Well, Bill worked with the Colombians, and up until then, it was like, yeah, okay, you owe us money, and they'd make them maybe tomorrow, maybe we'll see you the next day. We always knew we were going to see each other. I was going to get the money. There was never a doubt, but maybe they
Right.
got hung up or something. Well, once the Colombians came in, you don't have there's no doubt about what time you're going to pay them. It
Right,
became
right.
scarier. It was just different because
Right. I'll see you
you
Tuesday at
don't
two
mess around
o'clock,
with them.
or I'm
They're
gonna
not
chop your
like
head off.
before then. It was kind of like a hippie thing, I guess. Maybe it was so easy,
Hmm.
and when it became really nasty, it was hard because
And
then you
was it
knew
kind of
there were
a
guns or not. It was
yeah, and were you threatened physically, and
no,
was it kind of a
no.
"Pay
It
us
was
on
just
Tuesday or
maybe
we're
it
gonna
was a
shoot
matter
you"?
of time or something. I don't even remember the incident, but it's just not. It became pressure, and I never
Yeah,
felt any pressure.
yeah. No, it
Because
seems like it. Seems like you were nonchalant about the whole thing.
yeah,
Okay, so Rozanne, I have a question. Your dad was a big drug attorney. He was a criminal defense attorney, and he represented a lot of drug dealers. And you and your mom were always going down to the Cayman Islands, and you were young at that time. And you said that there was just a hotel and a bunch of banks, a Holiday Inn and a bunch of banks.
yeah.
Tell me about the Cayman Island experience and how many banks were there, and what did you know or didn't know while you were going down
I
there?
I was going on a vacation with my mother, you know, and when we get there, it wasn't like it was a resort. It was just a Holiday Inn. And there was a McDonald's and banks, just banks. That's it. At the time, still, I wasn't sure why my mother was there. Now I could tell you, years later, I found receipts for like $250,000. You know, so and then after you and I were talking about, or no, I was listening to a podcast of yours, Bruce, and you were talking about the Cayman Islands. I went, wow, so that's why my mother was there, you know, because I did know that being the attorney and dealing with the people he dealt with, he would get paid in bags, paper bags of money, you know. Uh, and actually, Paul told me that because he hired my father at one point, and that's how he got paid. So I guess he had to put it somewhere. And I do know
Yeah.
my father always had cash. He's always stashing it. Our house burned down once. He had an ammo box with cash, and I guess the fireman opened it, and the cash came flying out. So I was raised, I think, um,
To be a smuggler.
yeah, it was just slightly different end. When I was in high school, my father tried the first case in the United States about LSD, and there was a group called the the church. It was a church, and the head of the church was called the Chief Boohoo. So, and my father tried that case.
Was that out
So
of
I guess
Florida?
they got busted, but so I
Was
guess I was always kind of like felt like I was in a pirate's world because it wasn't like like when I had a business, get a cigar box. So I was always dealing in cash,
And
and
how'd you end up leaving Florida and headed out to, California? What made that big decision?
you know, that was, well, first, the Colombians, we had not we were quit working. Well, it was summertime at first, and summertime, there was no work to do. We had fun, but there was a man in a car sitting out in front of the house. It was obviously DEA. They'd sit there all day long reading, right in plain sight, reading the newspaper, and then they'd change guys. So I knew they were watching us. Um, and it was just I was done. I was done doing the Florida thing once it got
well,
mean.
talk about Operation Sunburn or Sunburst.
Right, and that's another thing is the RICO Act. The RICO
Mhm.
Act, I don't know if it was just started, but somehow it was activated, and they started, trying to round up all these people because then they could go on hearsay. You could say, "Yeah, I dealt with Bruce," and they'd wanna go get him and question him. And it was called Operation Sunburst. It lasted for 3 years, and it's called Operation Sunburst 1, 2, and 3. I didn't wanna get involved with that. I could see, obviously, that, they wanted to get me involved. Otherwise, I would be sitting in front of my house every day. So I wanted out. I packed my bags. I flew to San Francisco, with 13 suitcases, and I had my dog. Everything, I just put everything in storage. I had 2 cars, Alfa Romeos, and I was done. I just couldn't do it anymore. It was not fun because up until then it was so nonchalant. We used to we sold a lot in Boston. So we had drivers and we'd go buy cars. That's kind of a funny story too. When we go to a car lot to buy a car, we look at the trunk. We bought it if it had a big trunk that we wanted that
Right.
car.
Right.
We didn't look for the kind of, it didn't matter what it was, as long as it
So
could
you got
hold.
big 4-door Oldsmobiles and right.
It was, it was different, but that was our world. We had 3 cars. They each would hold about 300 pounds. And we had drivers, and they had to dress in suits like businessmen, and they would drive up to Boston, deliver. The next driver, when went up, he would bring back the money. So, when and that was going all the time. So that was a constant, like about a ton we needed for 3 cars, always back and forth. And finally, the
and
guys,
never any fear about getting ripped off from one of these guys
no,
or by getting busted in
no,
any way?
no, it wasn't like that. It was just like, no, it was never that way. Didn't work that way, no.
For the
And if
most
somebody
part,
was short,
No, that's
we
great
didn't
that there's
worry about
honor
it.
amongst thieves.
well, for the
I
most
love to
part,
hear.
for the most part, we all grew up as friends. And when you started, you were working with all your high school friends. Who's going to steal from a high school friend? We were all buddies. That's why nobody had guns. You all knew each other. So it was
Mine
very,
wasn't like that because I was raised in Daytona Beach, Florida, and I moved to Fort Lauderdale to smuggle, and we started smuggling. But
Mhm.
I didn't know these people before. A lot of them were from out of town. I didn't know how Paul knew them, but they were he liked them. They were his friends, so I trusted them, and it was
Yeah.
fine. There was none of that. It,
Yeah.
we were
All
all
right. So
in it
you're
together.
right. Right.
And
So
and
you're
they
done
knew,
in
and
Florida.
you know why people wouldn't rip you off? Because what? Then they'd be fired from that job. You'd never
Yeah.
deal with them again. You'd think anybody wanted to stop because everybody's making money, even the
Yeah.
drivers. They didn't want to rip us off, man. They wanted the next trip.
Sure. Sure.
Everybody wanted to stay and do what we were doing.
Yeah.
And
Well,
maybe they'd
you
bring
think that
somebody
there's so
else
much
in.
cash laying around. There's so much cash laying around. People just went, "Oh, if I take 500, who's gonna know? If I take 1,000, who's gonna know?"
Well, yeah, I could see that, but we had so much. There was so much cash, like Bruce was saying. I
Yeah.
can't remember figures. That doesn't matter. I just know there was a lot of cash, and
Yeah.
like you were saying, it didn't stay. You didn't have all of it all the time. If you had millions of dollars, somebody needed it. Somebody needed to be
Right.
paid.
To get paid, right. Right.
Somebody always needed to be paid. And you did it because you didn't want to lose your job. I
Yeah.
didn't want to rip anybody off and stop this. It was fun, and
Got it.
then when we weren't, like when the weed would come in, it would be, a certain time. And then you'd have time off because it was summer and there wasn't any loads. If you were lucky, maybe somebody had a stash left over. And if they did, that didn't last long.
Right. Right.
so
All right, so
Operation
you show up.
Sunburst. How involved? Tell us what you know about Operation Sunburst,
Well,
which is
Operation
why you
Sunburst,
left.
yeah, when I found out about that, I left and went to California. And then I would hear about it, and nobody, I was gone, so nobody knew where I was. But until I guess somebody visited my brother. It was probably, DEA, one of those letter people, it's probably DEA. And as they were leaving, they said, "Oh, by the way, we know where your sister is in California." So my father called me up and said, "Rozanne, go to a payphone." And I went to a payphone, and he said, you gotta leave. You gotta go." So at the time, I was dating Bruce, and he wanted to find a place of his own. So he finally found a house, and I put all my stuff into his house so I could leave, and I went to Mexico. I had to go. When my father said I had to go, I had to go.
Yeah. Okay, so we got to back up just a little bit there. Over that sentence that you just said. Oh, but I was dating Bruce then. So you're in San Francisco. You're with 13 suitcases and a dog. How do you meet Bruce?
Well, I think Carol probably put us together. And Bruce, at the time I had had a baby. She was like 2 years old, and my husband I'd separated from him when I saw Bruce, and it was easy to be together because I understood what he was doing. And if he had to go, he had to go. If he had to call somebody, he had to call somebody. Until I realized maybe he doesn't need to be doing all these calls. So we're going to go take a trip up north to get a hotel for the weekend. And I think he told you about that one. When I said, hey, no telephones. And that was fine because I knew what was going on. I knew. So I guess that was what made it really easy.
Right.
And from my perspective, here I have this gorgeous goddess, right? And she understood the business, and she was in the business. I didn't work with her. I did one load with Paul. I think I gave him like 300 pounds or something, and he was just too high all the time, and they were broken up anyways at the time. And so I decided he's unreliable. I can't work with him. But meanwhile, here's a girlfriend, and I was allowed to have girlfriends. Becky, we had an open relationship. She was sleeping with the pilot, and after I found out she was sleeping with the pilot, which was part of our okay to do open relationship, I said, "Well, I need a girlfriend now." So that's when
there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I took two, Rozanne and Lois. Okay, now I got two. So there.
Well, and I have to tell you, Todd, you made a comment, a while back about how a threesome doesn't work. It worked. It was fine with us. He'd come. He had flowers delivered to my house every week on Wednesday. Every week.
Nice.
And that was a big thing for me. I loved him.
So she didn't care that I had
let's
other...
talk about let's talk about this threesome. Who was a threesome? You mean, did you have a threesome together, or was it just you were in two different relationships?
Yeah, different relationships. I was still in love with my husband, but I was separated. I didn't see him that much. I got him a place to live, and when I knew Bruce was coming, I could give my daughter to my husband, my husband. Oh, we married yet? My husband. So, and I got married because he wanted to more than I didn't. So, so it was fine. I mean, I knew he lived at home with Becky, or actually most of the time she wasn't there. And he'd be gone. So that's why he had to get his own place. Yeah. Because I don't know if you were still like even seeing her. I think she had her boyfriend. And a lot of times she'd leave town. So you'd go back to the Oakland house. And then he got the house in San Rafael until he got.
And what about the house in Ukiah? Were you ever at the house in Ukiah?
Oh yeah, at the big party. And I got the best bedroom. I got the bedroom downstairs that had a round bed. It had curtains behind us that you push a button and they'd open and close. It had this beautiful bathroom and tub. Oh yeah, so I got the best room. Except
gold-plated fixtures in the bathroom.
Yeah, right. It was beautiful. We had a great time. That was so much fun.
That was the obstructors party.
With his attorney.
Yeah, that was the obstructors party. It was 1 year after my trial in Miami. We got accused of being obstructing of justice, so we made T-shirts that said the obstructors, and then a year later we invited everybody from the all the lawyers, the jury and trial consultants, the investigators, the defense witnesses, and I had 7 RVs parked along the creek wall, and we had the obstructors party a year after the trial, and Rozanne came to that. In the Ukiah house. And I was building a house on the top of the hill as I mentioned in our early podcast, for Rozanne, because we had Lois living downstairs, Becky in the top floor, and Rozanne says, "Well, I want a house," So I was up there where the landing strip was going to be. That was going to be Rozanne and I's house.
Oh, wow.
Because
And
to
did you
get a
work?
woman that understood and enjoyed and participated in marijuana smuggling was very unique and very rare. So I was extremely lucky to be with Rozanne because she understood. And she
Yeah,
also
it's like
understood the stress and the heat of it, and to get me the hell away to this, this trip up in Northern California where there was no payphones in the room or no phones in the room.
yeah, it's kind of like finding a girlfriend or wife that likes football, right? So
Right.
you can hang out together on the
Right,
couch and
exactly.
talk about, your football teams, right? Same kind of thing. And did you guys work together in California, or were you just affairing?
No, I was done. Like I said, I
Oh,
was
you were
done.
done. So you moved to
I'm a
California
very
and you were
independent
done.
woman, and I've never had I've never been like taken care of without doing my part.
Yeah.
So and I probably had some kind of artistic thing going at the time because I'm an artist and I believe in myself, so I don't need to go get a job, or I don't need a man. So Bruce was fun, and if he had needed me to sell something, I could have, but he had his thing all together. It was all together. He didn't need
Yeah.
me, you know?
Right. What kind of artist are you?
Um, it doesn't matter. I guess, I'm not sure at the time. I think I maybe do photography, and then later I was a multimedia image maker marker. I
Mhm.
took pictures, but I manipulated. I helped QA Photoshop. The
Mhm.
guys that I knew that actually wrote the program.
Uh-huh.
Photoshop people know that one. And
Sure. I use it every day.
lately I've just been doing it with my plants and big pieces of wood I find on the beach, big burls. I wish
Yeah.
I'd had some of the burls we used to have. That would have been
Right.
nice.
Yeah, and what was it like just being, like, the side piece of the King of Pot?
I didn't think of it like that.
I didn't either.
Right.
There was no side piece mentality involved in the relationship. It was we were
And I'm
boyfriend and
not a side
girlfriend.
piece anyway.
Exactly. She's the main
Because
event.
yeah, if I was a side piece, I guess I wouldn't have gotten so involved, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
it
then,
wasn't
how did
all
you guys,
because Paul was too high,
Yeah,
there was a
yeah,
lot of things. But
yeah.
back to the party, my job at that time was, bring a couple ounces of cocaine
To the party.
at the party you had at your house. I remember that. Just to give out because,
Well,
he would give it out.
did you still have Quaaludes left over? She brought
I did
1,000.
not. Bummer. When I moved to California, I had 1,000 Quaaludes. And, no, Quaaludes had gone out by then, and it's too bad. It was a great drug.
Yeah, so when you moved to California, you weren't done, right? You had
No, I
1,000
wasn't.
Quaaludes, and then you were done.
Well, no, I don't know. I can't remember who it was. Somebody when they had they had like 25 kilos of cocaine they wanted to sell. I'd never sold cocaine. It only took me a couple days, and that was the
Right.
last thing I did.
I've never sold cocaine, but I'm willing.
I
Right.
know, but, yeah, they needed help, and they wouldn't give it to Paul because he tried too much of the product.
Sure,
So,
sure,
people knew that they could trust me, and that follows you around, you know?
sure, sure.
It's like
And then what happens when, Bruce gets busted? I mean, what happens
I
to
was
your
in
guys'
I was
relationship, or
I'd
were you guys
already
still
was
dating
in
back then?
Mexico. Me and,
Alright, so you escaped to Mexico, you moved away, and,
well, my
what were you doing
father
down in
said I
Mexico?
had to leave, and if my father said I had to
Right,
leave, I was going. He knew what was
gotcha.
going on.
And what did you
So,
do down in Mexico, and how long did you stay?
about 6 or 8 months. What I do? I sat in the sun and read a lot of books and do
Nice.
anything. I mean, my daughter was like 3, and when Bruce got busted, I guess somehow my mother, somebody she knew, And so I called my mom, just talked to her, and she told us he got busted. So I stayed in Mexico, and Paul flew back and got our stuff, and we put everything. No, my mother had movers come put it in everything in storage, and then Paul went down to get the 2 cars and move those to another storage. So I was in Mexico and I wasn't coming back. My father didn't say I could come back yet, and I didn't. Because,
Yeah.
as I said, Operation Sunburn lasted about 6 months at a time. It was something to do with the court, the Supreme Court. I guess they were in, they were like in session, and so while they were in session, that would be Operation Sunburst 1. Then they'd leave for 6 months, and so they didn't do anything. And then, I guess, except investigate, try to find us. And then the next year, it was 6 more months. So I stayed gone, and I
Yeah.
did not return for a long time. We just would get a hotel. We'd go to some little town, get a hotel. Usually we like to get it with, where I could cook, a little cook. And it was funny because in the villages there, everybody either ate fish, or if they killed a cow, everybody got beef. So that was kind of a nice experience, actually. And then when I came back, I didn't go back to Marin County where we lived. I went to Santa Cruz, and I used my grandmother's name for about 3 years, So I stayed gone. And
Yeah.
when Bruce got busted, there was nothing I could do except I just had to stay gone. And that was the reality of things, you know?
Right.
Uh, I would never, the first thing I learned about when you were working with this business was never drop a dime. That was the first thing I was told.
And what does that
And
mean?
so
What does that mean?
that
Snitches get
means
stitches.
you get busted, you're busted. You don't need to turn anybody else in. And I wouldn't have. If I got busted, I did it. I made this choice. We all knew the consequences. So I just stayed gone because there was nothing I could do. I couldn't help him. I gave him all my furniture. I gave him my house, all my furniture, because
Yeah.
he didn't have anything at the time. And that's what I did for him. And then he got busted. And it wasn't, I knew he didn't do it on purpose, so there was nothing. I mean, nobody did it on purpose. I wasn't sure why he got busted or how, or I don't know. I still don't. I know that when I got all my stuff back and you look at pictures on the back, there's numbers. There's no, because they went through all my pictures and took out things they wanted,
Oh, I see. Right.
and
Right.
it was all numbered, just,
It's all
certain things.
evidence. Yeah, it's all
Anything with a
evidence.
boat on it, there was a picture. Even a sailboat, like a catamaran.
Right.
It was funny.
And did you miss being in the action all the time and all the excitement and all the fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the time, I really wanted to have a baby, and I got and when I left, it was 1978. And Nicole was born in 1980, so I got pregnant pretty fast. I used to think it was going, in California, everything was curvy and going up and down hills. Hey, we lived in Florida; there were no hills.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, to me, these hills were all mountains,
Yeah.
and I thought I was just getting car sick.
Oh, that's funny.
So by then I had a kid, and that's what I wanted to do. So no, when I
Got it.
left Florida, I was done until somebody
Except for the
brought me
Quaaludes and the
something.
Coke.
And then
Yeah,
I did a
yeah.
few
Except for the
deals.
Quaaludes, the 1,000 Quaaludes and the
Yeah.
35 kilos of Coke.
I didn't bring them to
then
sell.
I was done. Done. At that point, done.
That was my personal
and then,
stash.
somebody, brought me like this, 2 tons of heroin. And, after that, I was done.
Then I was and then, eventually I did start, with pot and pounds of pot, not thousands, but just.
So you weren't done. You were just on hiatus.
Yeah, I was on
Right?
hiatus. Yeah, until my
There you
daughter got a little older,
Right.
and then it was, it was like I wanted to make money, and I didn't want to go to a job every day. I wanted
Yeah.
to take care of my baby, so I started dealing a little
Right.
bit, And
Right, and OnlyFans was not available back then, so I guess, pot was the way to go.
yeah,
Right.
but and when we were doing pot in the 70s, it was like, there's nothing wrong with this. It's
Yeah,
better than alcohol. It's got to
yeah,
become legal. How can it not?
right, right,
You
and
know,
here we
and
are, and here we
and
are.
people that's not what they were getting fucked up on. You know, it was
Yeah,
cocaine back then. And that was I didn't know people that did heroin or anything like that. And
right,
it's just funny because the the worst or most vicious or and there was no, like I said, there were no guns, no knives, but this one guy had pit bulls. And, he would I guess they would stay up in the trees. Anybody came near his house, they had to that pit bull was gonna get get 'em. So, that was like the most protective thing I ever heard or saw.
yeah,
All right, there's
yeah,
pit
Pigs had
bulls
pit
in a
bulls.
tree?
In the
I
trees.
know,
They would
I know.
pit bulls are pretty crazy. They can be. And back then, nobody knew that pit bulls were sweethearts, and they are. And this one guy had him up in the tree. He lived down south over by the Everglades. And that's where when we bought a house to do a deal in, because it was our load, um, it was in the Everglades. So we kind of moved out into the Everglades because I don't know, people weren't there yet, you know?
Right,
It's like
right,
we were such pioneers that our routes, the boats or whatever took, we all pretty much knew how to do this. The mothership would, like, be out in the Bahamas somewhere, close, and then they'd come in, and we all did it. It was all kind of like the same. He talks about, Cat K. Well, my family, and we still do, own a house. My father built a couple houses in Great Harbor Cay. And so that's where the mothership stayed out there. I mean, everybody kinda did the kinda sorta now I'm learning the same thing,
right,
you know?
You
right.
know, Todd, speaking of that, it's amazing the parallels. I'm reading books before our podcast because we're gonna have a lot of the old smugglers on after we go through our organization. This is a stack of books I'm reading right now.
Mhm.
And there's a stack 4 feet tall in the other room that I have to get to, and I'm realizing we all did do a lot of the same thing. Exactly. Rozanne and Paul and I and my organization left California in 1978, the end of 1978. We both left because of the heat, and a lot of us got busted, in those books, in the '80s. The government finally caught up with us. The average lifespan of a smuggler, 15 years. The peak, 3 to 4 years. And the similarities are astounding, you
Yeah,
know, because
they
like
are.
Roseanne just said, that was a logical thing to do. You did this, you did this, you did this, and now that's when you're experienced and you grow up in it. We didn't know it was a logical thing to do. We learned. We learned from this guy. We learned from that guy. We were embroiled in it. It was just 7 days a week, nonstop in Florida, bringing in low. Like she was saying, that her cars never stopped moving. All right.
Yeah.
So
In the season.
yeah,
Yeah, and, here we are. We have, cannabis legal in 38 states, in one form or another, and, thanks to you guys laid all the groundwork for that. The funny
Yeah.
thing is about cannabis is that it's been in such high demand, right, since the '20s, right? Since it was banned in the '20s, right? And today, you know, it's just insatiable, right? Like you said, Roseanne, when it came in, it went out immediately.
Oh,
Well, the
yeah.
exact same things happens at dispensaries every single day all over the country. The demand for pot is just
Yeah.
insatiable. Uh,
Bruce said something, in the '80s, a lot of people were busted. Well, there you go, the ego. These guys would think, "Oh, we can keep doing it." They thought they were above it. That's why I said, "I'm out. I'm going."
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
you could see it. You knew it was happening. I don't It was a feeling I can't describe, that you did not know what was going on, or what or when. I remember I had a lot of cash, and that guy sitting in that car out there reading the newspaper every day, playing sight, definitely was a clue that, hey, maybe we ought to get stuff out of this house. And
Yeah.
I remember telling Paul, I'm leaving. I don't care if you leave. You could stay if you want. Because he would have, but eventually he decided to come with me. Otherwise, he probably would have been busted because he was one of those people that wasn't careful. And but
Well, he was
it
high all
was
the
like,
time.
you could feel it going on. So all those people that got busted in the 80s, it's on them. You knew it. Because by then, the Colombians had come to the United States, and they realized, wow, they're making a lot. Because we go and buy it. It was cheap. Well, we'd sell it. We'd make a lot of money. So
Yeah.
when they decided, well, we're going to do it. Ergo, my friend Bill Cobb being busted because he started dealing with the Colombians, and
Right.
things got rough. And obviously, I guess Bruce felt the same thing, and I mean, I was going. You could stay or come with me. I don't care.
Yeah. Right.
That's how I felt.
And
All right. Well,
as an aside, real quick, Bill Cobb's son now runs, I believe, the third largest legal dispensary operation in the state of Florida, and he named it after the Operation Sunburn. Is it Sunburn or Sunburst? But anyway,
Sunbust.
Sunburn. So I think his dispensaries are called Sunburn after his
Really?
father. Which is
Didn't
know
nice to
that.
do, to honor your father in that way.
yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
He wasn't
Well,
a person that
it's come.
needed to be honored. He
Yeah.
turned
Yeah,
me
that's for
in
sure.
because I
Yeah.
was Jewish. And
What?
so I was selling, at the time I had tried to quit. I was selling like ounces of cocaine, and I'd quit. But this guy, and Paul was in the hospital, and but my car broke. I said, okay, I'll go get you something. Like I think I got 4 ounces of coke, and I had about 5 pounds of pot. And
Wait. He
with-
was in the hospital, so you had to go out and get him coke
so
for the
I
hospital?
needed to get a car. This guy said he'd bring me a car. And so I sold to this guy, and I got busted. There were 40 cops came through every window and door at my house. I had like an acre, and it was this house that had it was 2-story, and then there was another loft, and that's where I stayed most of the time. I slept there, and I see this moving van coming through my gates. And I'm looking out the window, and then all of a sudden, these guys got out of the back of a moving it. I mean, it was like ants coming up out of the whole ant hole. And they're going, put your hands up. And I looked at them, and they've got guns. I said, no, you got guns. And I moved back away from the window. But I got busted, and what happened was this guy turned me in, and they put my name in, I guess, whatever they do, checking me out. And, bells came up, ding, 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 because I was not caught in Operation Sunburn. And I guess they thought I was a big drug dealer again. So as I said, they got like 4 ounces of coke and maybe 3 ounces of pot. That was it.
4 ounces of coke, 5 pounds of weed. That's
Wait,
nothing.
and Paul's in
Especially
the
from a girl
hospital?
who doesn't sell coke, right?
Nothing.
And Paul's in the hospital without his coke?
Yeah.
Right.
It was like we were separated. We were together then. And Nicole was like 9 years old. Yeah, that was fun. So
Yeah,
they
so did
thought
you do
I was
time? Did you get
big
off
because of what they
happened?
put into the computer or whatever, and they got all this information because I was wanted back then.
Yeah.
But
So what
because I
happened?
didn't,
What was the final consequence? What ended up
you know what?
happening
I
after you got
went to
busted?
court, and I got busted on Cinco de Mayo, and it was my birthday, December 8th. And I went to court, and everybody before me he's sentenced. When I went up, because I got clean, I was going to NA meetings and getting signed off, sometimes twice a day, and then my house burned down during the time my house burned down. Then my husband got AIDS, or my ex-husband got AIDS, and the judge said, and I was so serious about raising my kid and not being in jail, that the
Mhm.
judge says, you know what, I can't I can't sentence you to anything because you're doing really good. So nothing.
Oh, wow. Nice.
It was done.
Nice.
But it was kind of
And
scary. But
at that point, were you done?
you know what? I'm a rebel. I'm a pirate. I don't. The whole. I mean, I still. If I rent a room in my house, they pay me cash. I don't put it in the bank.
Yeah.
You know, it's something inside
Allegedly.
of us. No, I
Allegedly.
don't know if I'll
Right.
ever be done for something. Who knows?
Yeah. No, that's
Bruce, you got
funny.
any pot you need to sell?
Yeah.
I was just about to say, I think Brett's going to bring a load in next month. You're in San Diego,
Or,
you
know,
said?
a friend of mine who was also a big dealer out here, he had he was growing. I mean, he had a big operation. Oh, he got busted. I mean, they got, hundreds of thousands of dollars, out here growing. You grow some, but you're not allowed to grow what he had. So, if somebody needed me, I'd be there immediately.
Nice.
I'd go. If somebody was.
Well, if there are any smugglers or dealers that are watching this right now and you need some sales in California, right, hit us up here at Becoming the King of Pot, and we'll hook you up with Rozanne, because she's not out yet. She's just been in a long hiatus. That's what it's been.
Yeah.
So, Rozanne, it's been a lot of fun getting to know you and hearing these stories, and it's great that you're open to new business opportunities as well. So,
Well, there's more to dealing that I wanted to say about what my job was. Another job of mine was I had to go to the cemeteries and find children that had died that was around our age to get fake IDs. So that was
Yeah.
another one of my jobs.
nice.
Now that's not a
That's a pretty
normal
good job.
thing people do.
No.
I
That's not something you put on a resume, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But it was like figuring out what you had to do in order to stay safe and not be paranoid.
Yeah.
Was a part of this.
Yeah,
And
sure.
what Bruce did, Bruce was the hub. He was the voice of reason, and he had to know every job that needed to be done. And I honestly believe that Bruce didn't have to micromanage. He was smart enough to pick the people that he could trust and let them do their job and not try to, get into it. But if a problem happened, Bruce was the guy you needed because he could be a voice of reason. He like myself, and not to be tooting my own whistle,
Oh, toot it.
but nothing bothered me.
Right,
Never
right.
enough to make a big deal over like a lot of the guys were doing.
Yeah, like Bruce always says, you had that Alfred E. Newman, sort of way about you. What? Me worry? No,
Yeah.
no, nothing to
Yeah.
worry about.
If you're making me worry, like peeking out the window and being paranoid, you gotta go.
Yeah, nice.
'Cause
Well, there you
a
go.
lot of people doing cocaine, we get paranoid. Now, I never got. I've never been paranoid.
Yeah.
Ever about any of it.
All right, well, it's that time of the day where we have to say so long. So, Bruce, thanks for, obviously, thanks for getting back in touch with Rozanne and telling us these crazy, crazy smuggling stories. And Rozanne, great. Like I said earlier, just it was great getting to know you and hearing about your shenanigans in the drug space. And like I mentioned, she is open for business. Anybody who's looking for some kind of Southern California distribution of some kind. No, I'm just kidding.
Or overseeing. I can oversee.
Or overseas or whatever, right? So, if you
any
need a
job.
consultant,
Put me in
maybe.
it and I'll adapt.
Right. Exactly. Well, I'm Todd Dankin. He's Bruce Perlowin. She is Rozanne Anderson. Thanks for joining us here on Becoming the King of Pot, and we'll see you next time.